All right, folks, so here's the clay source that I'll be using and gathering from. This is a residual body of clay, meaning it's already tempered, so I don't have to temper it. I might throw a little bit of mica in the mix because Prescott Culture black on gray pottery was micaceous. Now, I'll be using modern tools, metal picks and shovels to gather this. In traditional times, antler tines and stone hoes were used. We can use either one, but this is a pretty dense body of clay and metal tools work excellent. That's what I have at my disposal, so that's what we'll use. Now, it's my belief that this is indeed a cultural body of clay. The reason I say that is because, number one, there's a hilltop pueblo that's about 60 meters in front of me and off to my right, and then there's pit houses about 30 to 40 meters behind me in a widespread area. But we also find stone tools. So these are some of the stone tools we have found affiliated with this clay body, and they show clear signs of wear. So we know that the prehistoric Prescott culture was in fact gathering from this source. And this is a large source, so this clay body goes about 10 meters behind me, and it runs pretty deep. So yeah, I'll just get at it. I'll start picking away at this clay. We'll gather it, and I'll need to let it dry. This is a little bit damp. We had a rainstorm come through here a couple days ago, so I'll spread this over a tarp or animal hides, and we'll let this dry for about a week. And that's what you're looking for. That right there. Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, I don't want to take up too much film time in this short segment, but as you can see, we have the clay gathered and it's spread over this tarp drying. Things are still a little bit damp. As I pull the clay together, it tends to clot. And I'm looking for drier pieces like you see here. These chunks are some of the surface material that we gathered. And this won't take long, maybe 3 hours. It's pretty warm outside, so this process goes by pretty quick. Once this is dry, I will then tunk it with a hammer stone, sift it. By sifting it, we are removing some of the larger temper in the clay body, and I get a more desirable ratio. After that, we will then slurry the clay. And slurring mountainous clay bodies are much more practical. Essentially what it does is it traps in the moisture, it makes things more plastic-like, and most important, it prevents cracking, so surface cracking to be specific. It's my belief that prehistoric Prescott culture did indeed slurry their clay. The reason I say that is because about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from this filming location, there's a major Prescott culture pueblo. It's a later pueblo called Fitzmaurice Ruin, as the locals refer to it as. And at that pueblo location, we do find slurring and aging pits. So the Prescott culture knew what they were dealing with, and they didn't want to make life more difficult. So they, in my opinion, slurried their clay. They made it much easier to work with than just adding a little bit of water to a dry mixture. Okay, so as you can see, the clay is nice and dry. When I try to mash it together, it doesn't clump, and that's what I'm looking for. So at this point, like I said, we will just crush and pulverize the clay or tunk the clay with the hammer stone and then sift it. So I sift it using a kitchen strainer. You can use a basket as well. And then I sift it into a 5-gallon bucket. So yeah, all I'm doing is crushing up some of these larger chunks and getting somewhat of a fine powder. This is all it takes when sifting. I'm just pushing the clay through and some of the fine temper. The excess material that I'm left with inside of the mesh, I just discard it. All right, I'll continue on. We'll process the rest of this and we'll move on to the next step. The last thing I'll do before we slurry this is I'll add my mica to this clay body. So if you look at Prescott Culture black on gray pottery, as we did, you'll see that there's a silver sheen to it, and they added mica to the mixture, and that's pretty common in Prescott Culture pottery, especially in the Williamson Valley area. You see it not only on the black on gray, the decorative wares, but you see it on plain ware. That's also common in Hohokam with red on buff pottery. It's highly micaceous, and it's a fine mica. It's not a coarse grain mica, and that's what we're adding to this mixture. So I just use my sifter and I'm pushing the smaller flakes of mica through. Okay, so as you can see, I have my pit dug, and this is really an easy process. I have 2 buckets and then cardboard to put on top of this hole. You don't have to use cardboard. You can use plywood. You can even use a stone slab, any cotton material, cotton textile. It's not material specific. It's just this is what is at my disposal. So what I'm going to do is transfer this dry mixture into this 5-gallon bucket. This is about half full, a little bit more than half full with water, and I'll begin to stir the clay mixture around. See, clay is hygroscopic, and what ends up happening is each fine clay particle will suck up this water, and once I put it into the pit, we'll really have this clay body expand, but also some of the water will evaporate. Now, this process of aging it in a pit actually goes by really fast, in Arizona at least. Back east, things are very, very humid and wet, so it takes a lot longer, but it should only take about 5 to 6 days to completely age this clay and slurry it and get the consistency we want. And then we can go to the next step of wedging the body of clay. So I'll just pour this slowly into the bucket. So I'm breaking up some of the larger clots as I stir this mixture. So that's all that's to it. Like I said, really not a complex process. The most complex part is definitely making and firing the pottery, which you'll see here shortly. But now the waiting process begins. So again, about 5 days this should be ready, especially around this time of the year with warmer temperatures.